Morning, everyone. Today we have Matt Francis, Giles Orr and Wendy Tindsley with us to discuss the Oxford ecosystem. Before we head on into our discussions, I just have a disclaimer that I need to cover off with you all. So we've asked Wendy, Giles and Matt to join us today just to provide some tips and tricks on the Oxfordshire ecosystem, including navigating funding that's available out there, etc. The topics that we're going to discuss are an overview of the options for you to think about and help you with your independent research and obviously your business decisions going forward. They aren't intended as recommendations or advice, and just note that your business has its own individual circumstances, so the statements and views expressed today may not be applicable or suitable for your business. So that's the regulation part of it, if I get my words out. So over to you guys. If I can just ask you all individually just to say hello and introduce yourselves and who you are.
Hi, I'll start. I'm Wendy Tindsley. I am an Innovation Director and I work for Oxford Innovation. We have 26 innovation centres nationally, and I support 5 of those centres. I provide business support for 5 of the centres in Oxfordshire.
Hi, my name is Matt Francis. I work for the Oxford Trust. We're the partners with Barclays on the New Eagle Lab at the Wood Centre for Innovation, the centre being run for us by Oxford Innovation. And my role within the Trust is Operations and Enterprise Director. So as well as overseeing the operations of the whole charity, I'm specifically involved in our enterprise support activities. So we aim to make it easy for science, tech, engineering and maths startups and all sorts of other tech affiliated startups to start up, to stay and grow in Oxfordshire.
And I'm Giles Orr. I'm the Head of Business and External Engagement at Oxford Brookes Business School. My role really is to take the expertise, the research and the enthusiasm of our students out into the local economy, working with businesses and other organisations to see how we can best support their needs through from starting up, and we have many startups within the university itself, through to how we support those more mature and larger businesses that are an integral part of the Oxfordshire landscape.
Amazing, thank you all for that. So today is, as I've already said, a discussion around the Oxford ecosystem, what an amazing ecosystem it is, and just various takes on some of the things that have happened obviously over the last 6 months, how that may sort of look to impact businesses going forward, how it might impact entrepreneurs with kind of their decision making in kind of launching a new business. So what I'd like to do is kind of have it in a style of a bit of a round robin, really, keep it quite relaxed, but kind of get opinions from all of you as we sort of go through our discussions. So from the top, why do you think that Oxford is one of the best places to start a business?
Shall I start? It's an absolutely amazing ecosystem. It's a very mature ecosystem in Oxfordshire. We have I think it's 9 innovation centres. We have 2 world-class universities. We have every expert under the sun that you would need to access. We have angel networks and a lot of really dynamic young companies. And I think probably thinking about this, one of the things that is great about Oxfordshire is there's a real can-do attitude and a real striving for excellence. So I think that's sort of borne out by the fact that the 2 universities are so amazing.
And I'll follow that if I can, Wendy. Thank you. I think that the interesting part of Oxford, of course, is that it's got the 2 universities and you've got a high growth in science and tech and associated startups, and there's great support for those organisations. But Oxfordshire is also a very thriving economy in its own right, through many manufacturing bases that we have here. Even the Mini is made in the city outskirts. But also Oxfordshire is very familiar to people as a destination. We have a very famous skyline. We have Blenheim Palace. We have some really good, rich history here that attracts a very strong visitor economy. So if you play alongside the growth in the science and tech with the great place and the great environment in which we are, Oxfordshire's well set for supporting new businesses.
Absolutely, I can't disagree with anything that Wendy and Giles have said there. For me, the secret sauce really, I think, is the melting pot. There's two great universities with every discipline under the sun under study by some of the leading academics in the world. They attract tens of thousands between them, undergrads and postgrads, to the city. The visitor economy attracts yet others, and you end up with a hotbed of innovation, basically, all sorts of different perspectives, all sorts of practical applications, all sorts of leading experts. And it's just a great place to take an idea from concept through to reality.
Brilliant. Absolutely. So, as we all know, the last 9 months have been a turbulent course, to say the least, in terms of the impact of COVID-19, various lockdown measures that we've had in this country. How do you, or what kind of effects do you think that COVID-19 has had on businesses to date in Oxford?
Well, if I can, I'll start on that. Mainly from a university perspective, in the fact that we've had thousands of students recently return to campus with some of the control measures we've had to put into place. But equally, it's a lot of young people all coming to a similar space at the same time, and it's proven quite challenging, but it's great to see them back on campus. I think overall for businesses, we've seen some successes. We've seen some organisations that have been in the right place to actually grow during this difficult time, and certainly at the forefront of some of the science and tech and medical tech that we've seen coming forward. Oxford has been at the heart of some of that. Equally, we've seen some organisations struggle where their traditional markets have gone away, but have actually pivoted into those new markets that are growing for them. Which kind of reflects on the entrepreneurial spirit that many of the companies in Oxfordshire exhibit. But equally, we also have those organisations that are really struggling at the moment, as there will be across both this country and across the world. And we're hopeful that we can provide some help and support to enable them to recover when the world changes.
Yeah, I mean, I'd echo everything you say, Giles, and certainly in my experience, again, it's been very much exactly that. It's been the spectrum from companies that sadly just haven't been able to cope and their markets have disappeared in front of them, right through to those who've been able to take advantage of some really quite significant opportunities that the situation's thrown out to them. And I think as well, it does help being in part of this network, because it's useful. You can have those serendipitous conversations with people and suddenly realise that you might have an opportunity you'd missed or you'd not seen, and you can capitalise on that. So yeah, I think it's been very sad and very hard for some people, but it's been good for others.
Yeah, I think that echoes our experience of everything that we've seen in the companies who are in our innovation centres. You know, it's a tough time for everyone, that could be especially so for companies on huge growth trajectories. You know, you've got to onboard 5, 10, 20 people in the next 6 months, and you're doing that all remotely and trying to not just take your team offline and keep them going, but trying to bring more people into the team. There's all sorts of opportunities there as well, obviously, in new markets and all the rest of it. But really, the practicalities, entrepreneurs at an early stage, I guess, don't have the time to pause so much. You're on such a tear in terms of growth to hit the milestones for your funding, because, you know, you've only just started 6 months, and if you don't don't get the product there in the next 6, then that's the end of it. And so it's that's the context that COVID has just accelerated. But that being said, I think entrepreneurs and early stage companies are very self-selecting for quick, adaptable problem solvers, and they're just, a lot of the companies we've seen have taken all of these challenges in their stride.
Yeah, thank you. So kind of thinking about entrepreneurs and, founders out there that are thinking of starting up a business, maybe over the next 6-12 months, or even beyond that, how do you think that will affect their decision making, as it were? What sort of impact do you think it will have on maybe the volumes of entrepreneurs that will launch their own businesses over the next 6 to 12 months?
I think one of the things that we've seen is not just the entrepreneurs as we define them, is that people generally have been quite robust and quite resilient during this period. I mean, there'll be some real sad stories about individuals and the impact that it's had on families. But we've seen people pick themselves up, and we've started to see some acceleration in terms of people reappraising their priorities and wanting to actually start to do things that interest them, things that they're passionate about, and things that they think can benefit others. And we're starting to see lots of those smaller businesses, or the thinking are behind perhaps setting up your own business, or perhaps joining with others with a similar mind. And we start to see the shoots of that coming through now. We've got lots of requests for help and insight and support around those things. The world has changed, not just from a geographic point of view in terms of where we can and where we can't go, but it's also changed, I think, some people's mindsets about what the future looks like. And given the support that we've got available around the city and the county, I'd hope that we can bear the fruits of that across the place.
Yeah, and we talked briefly about the sort of opportunities available through COVID for existing startups. But if you're out there with an idea or observing what's going on, there's plenty of opportunities for a bright idea or a tech transfer or something like that that is, if not as relevant, more relevant, given the current circumstances. And that, I think, combined with historically economic downturns are never bad for the numbers of entrepreneurs entering the ecosystem. I think big picture, it's likely that this will be a strong few months, maybe a year or two for entrepreneur and startup companies, and for people thinking about it. Clearly, as Giles said, priorities changing, the idea of working from home, working remotely, collaborating with who knows who around the world. Actually, opportunities seem to be more real, more readily available for those sorts of things. So I think there's every chance that we'll look back on the next sort of the COVID period as terrible for all sorts of reasons, but a really interesting spark and period for startups and entrepreneurs in Oxford.
Yeah, I'd agree, and I'd also think that starting a new company often we all know it's one of the riskiest things you can possibly do. But I think people have been through incredible risk, and there are people who have been facing the risk of redundancy anyway. And there are a lot of people who, again, because the climate's changed, the ecosystem changed, it's so much easier to go online and do things online. It's so much cheaper now to start a business, that I think there will be a lot of people who just think, now's the time. I may as well do it now, because life wasn't looking brilliant as it was, so let's take the risk, let's go for it.
Absolutely, and I'd agree. And sort of in terms of the support that's out there at the moment for startups and scale up businesses and entrepreneurs in Oxford, do you think what's out there at the moment will look the same post-COVID? So what support is out there at the moment, and will that support still be there potentially in in 12 months' time? How different will that look?
Well, I think certainly in Oxfordshire, the support landscape isn't going to change. It's not going to go away. There's a massive support landscape, and I think the biggest issue is finding the right support, because it's just quite difficult to navigate that ecosystem. There's so much support out there. So, and personally, I don't think that support will disappear. I think the key is just finding how to access the right support for you. And that's where people like the three of us come into play, because we all have strong networks and we know how to find the right source of support.
And very specifically to this, these last couple of months, something new in the ecosystem is the Barclays Eagle Lab, and we're finding that that already there's all sorts of people who have come to Nikki and your team there with ideas and with startups, and that not necessarily COVID specific, more correlation than causation there, I think, but it's a sign that actually the for us in particular, for everyone around the table, COVID is not getting in the way of us supporting the ecosystem being there and ready to help and aid anyone who's got a good idea and wants to turn it into a company. And that's only going to go from strength to strength.
I don't agree entirely with that. I mean, the business school did some research into the kind of local ecosystem in terms of the support that's available. Earlier in the year, prior to lockdown, what's been interesting to see since then is that the resilience actually of the ecosystem and the growth of it. Eagle Labs opening up is a fantastic thing to see happening. I mean, most small businesses or startups are looking for somewhere to go, to co-locate, to collaborate with like-minded individuals, and it's great that we've got facilities provided by all the participants here on this call. Also, access to finance, and Oxford is well known as a place where angel investors and other funding streams come through. And then the support network in terms of finding people that you want to recruit, maybe finding people who can build you your prototypes, finding people who can develop your social media and your marketing, are all here and actually have been quite resilient during this time. I think that moving forward, given that the perhaps the uptick that Matt was talking about in terms of people want to start businesses, I think we're going to see growing demand for those kind of facilities and that kind of support. And hopefully we'll see a different economy coming through, but supported in some ways by the same ecosystem and the same infrastructure that we have that's proven quite resilient over the period that's been established.
Absolutely. Totally agree with you all. I guess this is a bit twofold, really. The next kind of question I want to pose to you. If you could give two pieces of advice to somebody out there who's an entrepreneur at the moment, looking to start their business, what would they be in terms of how to navigate the ecosystem in terms of support, and a general piece of advice?
Well, I'm happy to jump in first on this one. It's a bit of a cheat, but the first bit of advice, if you're thinking about starting up and getting on the ecosystem, have a chat to someone who knows it. And there are two people on this call whose that is their day job, to talk to entrepreneurs and give them advice, and that's Nikki and Wendy here. But talk to any of us on this call and we'll point you in the right direction. That's the key, I think, for finding advice, is talking to people who either know the ecosystem or have been through it themselves. And on that second point, people who've been through it themselves, get yourself into an innovation center, get yourself surrounded by other companies who are doing the same sorts of things as you are, and you'll find that actually the problem that you're facing is something that someone else has been through, either exactly the same thing or very similar, and found a way through it and solved it and come out the other side. And they generally are more than happy to share advice. As for advice for companies starting up, I think that the key thing for me is to get started. Start out with those first steps along the line, and see where they take you. Really, the hardest part is getting going, and couple that with finding answers to the first questions that you come across and the first problems that you encounter by talking to someone who's been there, and you'll be off to a flying start, I think.
Couldn't agree more with that, Matt. I think the idea about finding peers or people in sector networks is great. I mean, it's obviously been demonstrated that peer support and peer networking is incredibly valuable when you're making those early steps to find those people that can guide you through the right places. I think accessing those networks has to come through those people that know the ecosystem and can help point you in the right direction. But the most successful entrepreneurs that we've seen are those people that take advantage of everything. You know, is go and see whatever there is and just see how that will fit with what you can do. And the best entrepreneurs will make those, will shape those into supporting what it is they need and what they want to do. So there are many touch points either through the industry and the sector that you're part of. There's general guidance and gateway availability through an organisation called OXLEP, the local economic partnership, and they can provide some pointers to support networks, but equally talk to the people on this call, and we'll see what we can do to point you in the right place. To follow up the second part, and following on from Matt about not being afraid to start up, is also don't be afraid of failure and the challenges and the setbacks that you will come across. If you've got the great idea and you've got the drive to see it through, you will see it through, but access all the support you can. And not everything will go as perfectly as you would hope. And don't be afraid of those times and those situations. And if you've got a great network, there's people there that can help support you through those times. We want to embrace and celebrate everybody's attempts at trying to get something off the ground and make a contribution both to themselves and to the county, and perhaps even on a global stage. So don't be afraid to keep pushing, but also don't be afraid when things are tough.
Yeah, and I'll just echo all of the above. And I suppose I'd say, as far as finding support, just find a shortcut. Don't spend hours Googling for the right support. Find somebody. As I say, 4 people on this call. We're all well networked. We know how to find the right support. But there are others like us out there. There are lots of people who are really well networked. So find somebody in the first instance to make sure that you get the right support. And then I guess I think my tip for any entrepreneur is always look at your product through somebody else's shoes, through the purchaser's shoes. I see a lot of people who've designed solutions for a problem that they themselves have, but they see the problem differently from other people. And so it's really important to ask lots of questions, get lots of feedback, and find out where that sweet spot is, where the person that's going to buy your product, why they want it, and you'll find that you've got a good route to market that way. So I guess that's my little tip.
Brilliant. Well, thank you all for your time today and for the brilliant insight into the wonderful ecosystem we have here in Oxford. Just to echo what you've all said in terms of, if you are somebody out there that is looking for support right now, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us. Even if we haven't got an answer for you individually, chances are we'll know somebody who does. So please don't hesitate. I hope you've enjoyed our time this morning, and thank you all.
Thanks, Nikki.
Yeah,
Thanks, Nikki.
Thanks.